which is a really interesting verse, and I'm sure probably one that several of us or many of us in the room have spent some time contemplating, meditating, spending some time in prayer about that particular verse. It has to do with temptation or God testing us, and so it's a complicated verse, and I'm sure that all of us have life experiences that we can apply to what Paul writes in that verse, and try to figure out exactly what it is that he's talking about there in 1 Corinthians 10:13. So that's where we left off. If you're interested in finding more about that, then please go back and watch last week's class. It's still online. You can go back and watch that. But we're going to pick up right on the heels of that in chapter 10, verse 14. So we're going to pick up there and read this next section together, verses 14 through verse 22. Paul writes, he says, "Therefore, my dear friends, flee from idolatry. I speak to sensible people. Judge for yourselves what I say. Is not the cup of thanksgiving, for which we give thanks, a participation in the blood of Christ? And is not the bread that we break a participation in the body of Christ? Because there is one loaf, we, who are many, are one body, for we all share the one loaf. Consider the people of Israel. Do not those who eat the sacrifices participate in the altar? Do I mean then that food sacrificed to an idol is anything, or that an idol is anything? No, but the sacrifices of pagans are offered to demons, not to God, and I do not want you to be participants with demons. You cannot drink the cup of the Lord and the cup of demons too. You cannot have a part in both the Lord's table and the table of demons. Are we trying to arouse the Lord's jealousy? Are we stronger than he?" Okay, Paul has been weaving in and out of the last several chapters, conversations, lessons, questions about food, meat sacrificed to idols, the Lord's Supper. We're going to continue with that conversation of the Lord's Supper into chapter 11 as well. And he's weaving in and out of these issues that the Corinthians are having, this ongoing discussion and argument concerning what the Lord's Supper is meant to be, and how the Corinthians are meant to be a community, a united community following Jesus and doing the things that Jesus has instructed them, rather than doing the things that they are used to according to their old life, the habits that they had formed, the things that were normal for Gentiles and pagans to do. And so Paul's been going through all of this for the last several chapters. And I think here Paul uses some very strong language to indicate to us, again, that there are diverging paths that a person who follows Jesus must decide: am I going to follow him, or am I going to do what is convenient or comfortable or known? Am I going to fall back into those old patterns and routines that I've had for my whole life? So Paul's, okay, you've got the one path, follow the way that you've always followed. You have this other path, follow the way of Jesus. If you truly are Christ's follower, you're going to clearly choose to follow Christ, but that's going to require of you that you change some of your behaviors, that you change your life and change the things that you're doing. You can't have both the Lord's Supper, the table of the Lord, and the table of demons. You can't have them both. Reminds me a little bit of Jesus when he's talking about in the Sermon on the Mount, and he says, you can't serve two masters, right? Like, this is the same kind of idea, I think, that Paul is talking about here. You can't participate in the table of the Lord and participate in the table of demons. Okay, so I found a couple of things fascinating when you compare what's being discussed here in chapter 10 with some of the things that Paul has previously said in chapter 8 about food, meat that's been sacrificed to idols. So I thought it might be worth it for us to compare and contrast for just a moment together a couple of the things that Paul talks about. Okay, so as Paul enters into this, verse 18, he draws our attention back to Israel's story. We spent some time at the beginning of chapter 10 going through some of those stories from Israel's past, the history of God's people that this Gentile church of Corinthian Christians probably wouldn't have known, but Paul's drawing their attention back to that. In verse 20, he makes the statement, he says, food sacrificed to an idol is sacrificed to a demon. But earlier in chapter 8, let's think about what Paul says in chapter 8, because he's talking there about food sacrificed to idols. And in chapter 8, verse 8, Paul says, food does not bring us near to God. We are no worse if we do not eat, and no better if we do. In chapter 8, he's making the argument. He's saying that we know that meat sacrificed to an idol is really sacrificed to nothing. An idol is just a block of wood or a block of stone. We know that that's really nothing. So in chapter 8, he says, it brings you no closer to the Lord. It's no better if you do it or don't do it. But in chapter 10, he says, if you participate in eating a meal of food that has been sacrificed to an idol, it's as if you're participating in the table of demons. Okay, so do we see two different things almost that Paul's talking about here? So I thought this would be interesting for a little bit of discussion tonight. So who makes sense of what the difference or what has changed from chapter 8 when it's no big deal? We know that idols are nothing. So if you eat meat that's been sacrificed to an idol, like you're eating meat that's been sacrificed to no one, to now in chapter 10, if I eat meat that's been sacrificed, it's been sacrificed to a demon. That's pretty harsh, strong language, right? So what ideas, what thoughts do we have about the difference between what Paul's writing about here in these two chapters? Or is there a difference? Is Paul just saying two opposite things?
You're the teacher.
You've been waiting. Oh, you've been waiting to use that one. I'm not going to let y'all off the hook that easily. Any thoughts or ideas about maybe is there a difference between these two statements, or how do we think about these two things?
The key word is participation.
Okay.
And Paul uses the analogy that communion is participation with Christ, and he doesn't want the Christians in Corinth to participate with demons.
Yes.
It has to do more with intent and circumstances than it has to do absolutely with whether the food is consecrated to demons or not. It's the intent of the worshiper. If you're worshiping a demon by eating meat sacrifice to that demon, then obviously that's inappropriate for a Christian to do.
Yeah, that's.
And I'm not saying that a demon is nothing. I don't believe that demons are nothing. I do believe that idols are nothing.
Yes, yeah, and I think that's a really great way to kind of focus in on this. The key word Randy said is participation, right? So, are you participating in the table of demons, or are you eating meat that has been sacrificed, which we know is sacrificed to nothing, right? There's a difference in intent. Am I worshiping? Am I entering a worship posture, stance? Am I participating in some kind of idolatrous feast? Or is this just meat that's been sacrificed to nothing and it's okay for me to eat, right? And there seems to be a distinction there. I think that's probably wise to see that is what is the intent of the heart in doing this? And am I jumping into some kind of idolatrous feast willingly, or am I just, it's a slab of meat and it's not going to really hurt anybody? But in the first route, to participate with an idolatrous feast is to court the demonic, the spiritually evil, that which is far from God. You are beginning to move away from God in that instance. So I like that, Randy. Thank you. Anybody else? Other comments or thoughts?
Jay, from what this is my understanding, but it could be that it's a wrong understanding. But having been to Corinth and had it described there, people would go to the temples to eat a feast dedicated to these gods. So they're participating in a different way than if they buy some meat down in the meat market that had been sacrificed to idols and take it home. Again, like Randy said, it's totally different intent.
Yes.
That could be wrong, but
yeah,
that's the way I've had it explained.
No, I agree with that, and worth revisiting. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago. I think in fact Lynn was the one who asked maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, how are they obtaining this meat that's been sacrificed to idols, right? Like where does this come from? And Rick's point is good. There's 2 primary ways that this can happen. One is that you go to the temple of Apollo the temple of Aphrodite. You go to the temple, and I never can say this god's name right, but that's okay, I think, because it's not, it's a lowercase g god, so I think he'll forgive me. Asclepius, Aescy. Denver's not. Somebody else has heard of this god, right? At least one person has, right? There's all kinds of gods and goddesses in Corinth. Like, it is everywhere. And most of them start with the letter A. That's how I remember it. We have Apollo, Aphrodite, Asclepius. So you can go to their temple where meat has been sacrificed, and anytime, I mean, it's like throwing a barbecue, is essentially what, but with worship involved. And so, they throw this idol feast, this God feast, and they're having a barbecue, and they're inviting everybody because there's plenty of meat. But if you go to the temple and participate in this idol feast, it's as if you're you're participating in with the worship of that idol. And there's a difference between doing that and finding out that the meat that was sold to you in the market happened to have come from the leftovers of the idol feast. Well, okay, I mean, those gods aren't really gods. So if I buy this meat, I'm not going to be participating in the worship of that god at the temple, and it's just meat that's been sacrificed to a rock. So does that make sense? Does that help us kind of get an image?
I think last week, if we're not even guilty of the legalistic side of this in our own culture, because many Chinese restaurants you go to, if you'll notice, they'll have up in a corner somewhere, they'll have this place where they have sacrificed some food to Buddha. And so have they done that with all the food in the restaurant, or is it just a portion of it that they take to sacrifice there? And so are we sinning by eating Chinese food there?
Yeah. And you guys are never going to be more aware of your surroundings the next time you go to a Chinese restaurant than after that comment was made right there. I can tell you that for I've never noticed that in my life before. But now I'm going to be looking for it, I'll tell you that much.
I don't think the ones here in town have that.
Okay.
There's a lot of them
Yeah.
that have.
Okay. We need to get a group text going and find out which restaurants these are so that we know what we're walking into, right? So
It's right by the way.
yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well, I want to draw our attention as well to verse 17, because I think verse 17 plays a role. This is back in chapter 10, verse 17. I think this plays a role in helping us to figure out perhaps what some of the things that we need to pay attention to are here as well. Verse 17, because there is one loaf, we who are many are one body, for we all share the one loaf. This is Pauline through and through. If you have read through the letters of Paul, Paul loves this image. The idea of oneness, and particularly of being different parts of one body. That while we can each look around the room and say, there are a certain number of individuals here that all have different backgrounds, that all have different stories, all have come to faith in different ways, all have different gifts, on and on the list can go, that there is something about participating in the Lord's Supper that unites, and baptism and the Lord's Supper. There's something about participating in the death and resurrection of Jesus, baptism and the Lord's Supper, that takes me, and I'm no longer just me, I'm a new me, but I'm also you and we. And the same is true of each of us. And Paul believes this so dearly, and it's so important to him, that to participate in something that rips the body apart is unthinkable. And so for these Corinthians, they've got issue after issue after issue. They've got problems all over the place. The idea that you would try to participate in both worlds, that you try to straddle the line and say, I can be who I used to be, and I can be this person that Jesus is calling me to be, is nonsense. I mean, he thinks that you might be something that starts with the letter S, TUPID, if you try to do that. And so he is really focusing on this idea that you cannot participate in the worship of some idol or participate in the table of a demon and be associated with Christ. And I think I would hope that we would all agree with that, with what he's expressing here in this.
That we're doing the right thing.
Yes, of course, yeah. Okay. Anybody else want to take a stab at trying to figure out what's Paul talking about in this section? I don't want to cut anybody off who wanted to have a chance to make a comment. Okay, I'm just going to pretend like you've all got really good thoughts going on in your mind and turn it back over to Randy again.
I think it's important to note that there are those who believe that because Paul uses the one loaf idea to communicate that part of the purpose of communion is to show unity, that we should be using one loaf rather than a nice little square communion. I don't necessarily agree with that, but there are those people who believe that.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
And I condemn them for believing that, because that is a metaphor, really, that Paul uses.
Yes. Yeah.
You have to have an awfully big loaf to serve in our church.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and there are lots of church. We call them the one cuppers, right? Like that's what they're known by. We don't call them the one loafers, because I think we'd get them confused with shoes. But there are the one cuppers, is what we call them, right? And I will confess to you, I'm a germaphobe. I would struggle immensely if we tried to do the one cup, and I have been to different church services, and I've seen I've seen this play out, right? And typically what happens is if it's a high church setting, there's a priest or something like that, and it's much more common, I think, in a high church setting. But there are churches of Christ that are one cup settings as well. But they'll serve you the cup, and then they will take their shirt and they'll wipe. And yeah, it's like, oh no, like it was bad enough, and then we had to add the priest's clothing into the mix, So yeah, that is a challenge as well. But there are certainly those who will take that on a more literal basis than they will kind of a interpretive, metaphorical basis here. Paul's not saying that literally we are one body. I mean, you can pretty easily see how that's not the case. Although I will say this, Jamie, my son, a couple weeks ago was really into Wreck-It Ralph. And there is a scene in Wreck-It Ralph where many Wreck-It Ralphs make one giant Wreck-It Ralph. So I guess in Disney animation, it is possible. But we are not literally one body, and yet we are literally one body. So take that however you will, and interpret that statement however you can. Okay. 1 Corinthians.
There's unity and diversity.
Yes, yeah. Unity and diversity. Okay, 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 23. Let's pick up and continue reading. I have the right to do anything, you say, but not everything is beneficial. I have the right to do anything, but not everything is constructive. No one should seek their own good, but the good of others. Eat anything sold in the meat market without raising questions of conscience, for the earth is the Lord's and everything in it. If an unbeliever invites you to a meal and you want to go, eat whatever is put before you without raising questions of conscience. But if someone says to you, this has been offered in sacrifice, then do not eat it, both for the sake of the one who told you and for the sake of conscience. I'm referring to the other person's conscience, not yours. For why is my freedom being judged by another's conscience? If I take part in the meal with thankfulness, why am I denounced because of something that I thank God for? So whether you eat or drink or whatever you do it all for the glory of God. Do not cause anyone to stumble, whether Jews, Greeks, or the church of God, even as I try to please everyone in every way. For I am not seeking my own good, but the good of many, so that they may be saved. Follow my example as I follow the example of Christ. Okay, Paul, it would have been so much easier if you had just written this section like chapters ago. Paul, like you dropped all the wisdom into one section. We've been building up to this for several chapters now. But I love what Paul talks about here. They have sent him a letter, and apparently in this letter that they have sent to Paul, he quotes them twice. He says, I have the right to do anything. Apparently this is something that they have written to him. I have the right to do anything. We have the right to do anything. We've been set free by Jesus. And so Paul has to, okay, technically, kind of, yes. Like, you are free. You've been set free by Christ. Yes, you have the right to no longer live according to the law of Moses, but not everything is beneficial for you to do. Not everything will build up the body. And so he has to kind of work through this. He talks about meat and what happens if you're invited to somebody's house and they're serving you and they say, hey, by the way, this was, we're eating Chinese tonight, and so you just need to be aware that we're eating Chinese tonight, and so he goes through all this, and I love the way that he ends this, verses 30 through 11, verse 1. It's just packed over and over again with the things that we need to be reminded of, that we need to hear. Verse 30, thankfulness. How can you be denounced because of something that you're thanking God for? If you have the attitude of giving God the credit, it's going to be really hard for somebody to follow that up and be like, oh, but you were actually worshiping a different God, while verbally and visibly you have been giving credit to the God. And so we need to know that. We need to know that we need to live our lives with visible thankfulness. Whatever you do, do it all for the glory of God. So this applies to more than just food. This is not just about meat that's been sacrificed to idols. It's about everything that you do. Do it all for the glory of God. Make sure that that is evident in what you're doing. Don't cause someone else to stumble. They've got this complicated mixture, Jewish background, Gentile background. Now we're the church together. How do we figure out how to do things that are inoffensive to each other when everything that we do is offensive to each other? Well, do everything that you do for the sake of the other person rather than for yourself. Don't seek your own good, but seek the good of the people that you're worshiping alongside. Follow my example, Paul says, as I follow the example of Christ. Paul's really talking about, do you have a self-focused approach to life, or do you have an others-focused approach to life? And if you're trying to figure out, how can I make sure that I get what I want and do the things that I want to continue to be able to do, guess who you're going to be most concerned about in this life? You. If you're thinking, how can I do something for others? How can I make it possible for others to come and worship God? How can I make sure that they know who I'm worshiping? Guess who you're going to be thinking more about? Is others. You're going to be trying to welcome them and incorporate them into the body of Christ. And so Paul's really trying to make that distinction clear, that if you change your focus, then I think the rest will begin to fall in line. If you begin to have that mindset of Christ rather than the mindset of self, things will begin to fall in line and things will begin to work out. Okay, so a couple of key questions for us to consider tonight, and for us to maybe have some discussion about as well. What practices help me to become selfless? He mentions a couple of them in the section that we've been reading tonight, both of the two sections. He mentions some practices. There may be top of these things, but what can we do to help us have that mindset that's focused on me, on what I should get, on what rights I have, on what my freedoms are? But what can we do that will help us acquire and to maintain and to keep this focus of thinking of others as better than myself, rather than of thinking of what I want and what my needs are, what my rights are as a follower of Jesus? He mentions several in this passage, but there's probably others. A couple that he mentions here. The Lord's Supper, we talked about that. Hospitality and generosity in verse 27. He talks about how we can have people in our homes and offer them freely meals and food. Verse 30, I mentioned gratitude. So those are some practices, but there are other practices as well. So what practices connect with you? What are the things that help you think less about what I should be doing and what I need, and more about others that you can be building up in the body of Christ? Prayer. Okay, good. Praying specifically for others, right? Because even our prayers can be very self-interested and self-focused. But yes, praying for others and praying for God to help us have that mindset. Good. Okay. Yeah, serving someone. One of the pieces of advice that I least wanted to hear ever in my entire life. I can't remember what caused it, but I was not having I was in a bad season of life at that particular time. And somebody told me, you know what you need to do is you need to go volunteer. And I was like, that is the last thing I need to do right now. Do you know how bad my life is right now? And but it's amazing how out of yourself you can get when you begin to serve somebody else. So it was actually very good advice, but it was not advice that I wanted to hear at all in the moment. Good. What else? Listen. Okay. Tell me more.
We like to talk about ourselves. We like to do a lot of talking, and listening first might help.
Good. Yeah.
Listen to understand, not respond.
Mm.
I always like that.
Yeah. Be quick to listen and slow to speak and slow to become angry. Yeah. Beautiful. Good. What else?
I think if we find ourselves complaining, it's usually because we're focused on us. I think I kind of release that main thing once. Like they're kind of flip sides. If we're complaining, we're worried about how this affects us. And like I said, if we listen to others, then we see what they need. And I would just think about the listening. There's just a lot of people in the world that just need someone to listen.
Yeah.
Regardless of where you're at.
Yeah. Yeah. Part of that listening can be asking good questions too. To really spend some time thinking, what is a question that would be meaningful for me to ask of this person? And then to do just what y'all have said, to listen, to understand, to listen, to spend some time thinking about them rather than yourself, giving them the space and opportunity to express what they're struggling with, what they're going through, what their life is like. Good.
I think part of that listening is sometimes a lot of cases people are just lonely. Life is usually people in their lives are so busy that they feel forgotten. And part of that, don't think of yourself. Think of, visit someone that's lonely. Because there's a lot of folks out there. And they may want to talk and you need to listen, but it may not be about anything. It's just being there because of loneliness.
Yeah. If you ever find yourself in a spot where you don't know how to respond to somebody because they just need to talk and you're not even sure at the end of it what it's about, thank you for telling me all of that. Right? Just it's as simple as that. Just thank you for telling me that. And that helps them to feel like they heard me, they listened, and they're appreciative that I was willing to share what's on my heart with them as well. Let me throw a couple of unpopular ones at you. This one might seem a little bit counterintuitive, but I really think it can help you begin to think of others rather than yourself. Rest. Rest seems like a very self-focused kind of thing, but it's amazing how much better you can be for others if you have taken care of yourself with a simple thing like being rested. We live in a society and a culture so fast-paced and so intent on production and finding our value in producing that it can be very hard to incorporate adequate rest, and not just the kind of rest that I feel like I had a good nap, but the kind of rest that helps me to listen, that helps me to respond to people's needs when there's something going on, to be able to take the time to do that, to not have your life so full and busy that there's no opportunity for others to even find a place to squeeze in. So I think rest can be helpful. Any comments over here? I heard maybe some laughter.
Don't get me in trouble.
Anytime Les comes up, he always laughs.
Okay.
You started laughing first.
I do think it needs to be done with intention.
Yes. Yeah.
It's a, yeah.
Yeah, there's a line between laziness and rest.
She's not even close to it.
Yeah, I think most people, Beverly excluded, when it comes to, okay, how do I do that? I apologize. I threw most of you under the bus just now. Look at me. How terrible for me to have done that. I will speak for myself. Okay, how about that? I tend towards sloth and laziness. Rest for me is about me. And there's a line there that has very different intentionality between I'm just vegging, I'm just lazing around, and I am participating in something that God thought was so important that He commanded His people that every 7 days you do this and you trust me. And there's a difference, I think, between those two things. And so this other one, not what I'm prone to, but this other one that God has commanded His people back in the Old Testament, I think that's more of something that would be helpful. Okay, another unpopular one. So no laughing. Okay, fasting. Oh, why did I have to say that? I am not a fan of fasting. That means I have to give up something that I love dearly in this world. But man, uh, it is amazing when we participate in that practice. Again, not legalistically. There's lots in here about that. But when we do this from a pure heart and from pure intention, we create something within ourselves that is not natural. It doesn't just happen unless you work for it, unless you give something up for it. And so I would encourage fasting as well. That is the removal of me from the equation so that God can fill me instead, and I can become open to what God wants for me. And so I think that's another practice perhaps that I'd recommend. And there's lots more, lots more. So put some thought towards that. Be thinking about that. So, somebody said something.
There's a couple of words that have just been used that I think for me, this is pointing this way. Practices. Sometimes some of these things you have to, and intentionality, which you just said, and I think is one of Beverly's favorite words. So it doesn't happen overnight. If we've spent our life thinking, I, me, mine, sometimes if you really set your mind to it, and you'll catch yourself, and after a while you are practicing and you are really working on it to get where you want to be. And like I say, the times I've tried, it takes a while. You don't normally change overnight on some things. Yes, there are some can be changes, but that's two words I think that we need to practice and be intentional about.
Yeah. Have you ever had that moment in life when somebody who's wiser than you and tells you to do something, and for whatever reason, like you have that moment of whether it's like, no, I'm not going to do that, or I'll get to that eventually. I had one of those moments recently. Somebody wiser than me lent me a book and said, you need to read this. And he's sitting in the room. He's right over there. And it wasn't that I was not. I was like, I'll get to that. If you know me, like reading is a passion. I love reading, but man, do I want to read what I want to read, right? So I was like, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that. But how long have I had this book? 6 months, 8 months, and that was short. That was short because Mark gave me a book like 3 years ago that I finally returned to him like 2 months ago. So, anyways, but I did. Yes, it took me about 2.5 years, but I did read it. Anyways, Rick gave me this book written by Dallas Willard called The Great Omission. And Willard has this great line that he repeats over and over again throughout that book. I'd submit it to you as something to chew on. I've been chewing on it for 2 weeks now, or however long it's been since I finished the book. But he said, grace is opposed to earning, but not to effort. You cannot earn your grace. You cannot earn God's favor. But that does not mean that God does not want you to live towards what he has called you to live towards perfection. I mean, Jesus says, be perfect, therefore, as I'm perfect. He wants us to live towards that. We'll never attain it on our own. That's only through the work of the Spirit. But grace is opposed to earning, but it's not opposed to our effort, our practice, our intentionality, our living in that direction, choosing the way of Jesus against the way of me. So I've been chewing on that. I'd invite y'all to chew on that too. Okay. What practices? There's lots, but let me ask you another question, another key question for tonight. How are you participating? How am I participating? How are we participating in the mission of God in our lives? In chapter 10, verse 33, Paul says, even as I try to please everyone in every way, for I'm not seeking my own good, but the good of many, so that they may be saved. That's the mission, right? That's the Great Commission. Go and make disciples. Preach, teach, baptize in my name. This is what Jesus has told us to do, is to go and help others come to know him and to follow him so that they can be saved, so that they can be a part of what God, this new community that God is forming on earth. And so how can we participate in that in our lives? I was telling, I had breakfast this morning with Clyde Slimp, who is our contact with Eastern European Mission. And he's telling me all these great stories, of course, about the work that's going on with EEM and these families with children that they've grown up in war-torn countries, and they get a Bible, they get an EEM Bible, and now they've met the good Jesus, and they sleep easier at night because they've met the good Jesus, and their dreams aren't as filled with their surroundings, but instead they're filled with things that they're reading out of their Bibles. It's stuff that like touches your heart, right? It's like that's what we all want, right? Like that. I want that. I want to have that. I want to see that happen. And so the question is, okay, how are we participating in that, right? I'm so grateful for EEM, but I want that in my life. I want to know people like that family with that little girl that is having sweeter dreams because she's met Jesus. Like I want to know someone like that. I want to help someone like that. And so how are we participating in the mission? Who is the person that God has put into our life? Who's the one person that God says, this is a person that you can help introduce Jesus to in the way of Jesus and what Jesus has done for them? And so how are we participating in the mission of God in our life? I've told you guys, some of you before, my hero when it comes to evangelism is my dad, and he is terrible at evangelism, but he's so good. My dad has spent the last 20, 25 years of his life trying to evangelize two men. And one of them he's following Jesus and he's horrible at it. He's not any good at it whatsoever, but he's trying. And the other one is a Buddhist monk. It's like my dad is like 25%. He's batting 25% over the last 25 years of his life about bringing people to Jesus. But I love the intentionality and the effort that he's put forth with those two people. Just trying daily. I want you to know about who Jesus is, right? So who are those people in your life? Maybe it's a family member, a neighbor. Maybe it's somebody that you haven't even met yet, but God's about to introduce you to them. So how can we participate in that and what God's doing? Okay, a third question. I love what Paul says in chapter 11, verse 1. He says, follow my example as I follow the example of Christ. So whose example are you following? Paul, go all the way back to the beginning of 1 Corinthians, right? The Corinthians are debating, who should we follow? Who should we listen to? Who's the right teacher for us? Who's the one who knows the right things that we want to know, the super spiritual things? Is it Paul? Is it Apollos? Is it somebody else? Paul ultimately is following Christ. He says, look at my life. You can see that I'm following Christ. So follow my example as I follow his. It brought into my mind this idea of mentorship as well, that it would be so good for all of us to have somebody above us and below us that we're being mentored by, and that we're trying to mentor ourselves as well. That we're trying to help people know this is what it looks like to follow Jesus. Man, I've been through what you've been through, and here's what you can do. Here's a way that you can pray. Here's a way that you can trust in what God's going to do for you. Here's something that you can be on the lookout for. Or I've never experienced anything like this before. What am I supposed to do? And you can ask somebody, a trusted person that can help lead you and guide you in that. if you're lucky, you'll have more than one person throughout the course of your life. But I think we can put that effort and intentionality into having those conversations with people about their example that they can give to us, and then maybe examples that we can give to somebody else as well along the way. I'll throw it out there. We have a minute. Anybody in here want to brag on a mentor that they've had in their life? So somebody, whether the rest of us know this person or not, right? Like it could be somebody we've never met before, but I'll give you a chance if there's somebody that you want to take a chance to brag on and say, oh, you should have met Sister Clarita. Sister Clarita was the best, or whoever it is, Yeah, Joanne.
I think if you, the person that helped you to see Christ is.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. Who is the person that made Jesus alive to you? He went from a person in a book on a page to he is the living Jesus, the risen Jesus. Like who is that person or people that helped make that story that who Jesus is come alive to you? If they're still living, if they're still with us, might as well send them a gratitude. Might as well send them a text tonight and just say thank you for helping me love Jesus the way that you have in your life. And I'm sure there'd be lots of people who'd be touched to receive such a message as that. So, okay, good. Yeah, John.
I want to brag on Lynn Long.
Mm.
I've been around her quite a bit, and today, the saddest thing to me is we live our lives as Christians, but we don't totally accept God's grace. We think we do, but then we come to the end of life and we're scared. We're frightened about the unknown. It's only natural to be that way to a certain extent. I understand that. But Lynn was not that way. I mean, she is so positive in her faith and her time to go. And she talked to Lisa a lot about it today. And so during this time, we've got a great example of a person that just has accepted that grace, is proud of that fact, and has been telling everybody about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. That's thank you. Last year about this time, we did a sermon series on spiritual giftings. And one of the spiritual gifts that we talked about was the spiritual gift of faith. And there are some people in the room tonight as well, included, that have an ability to stand in such trust of God that no matter what the life circumstances are, that they just trust, that they just follow God and just say, if it's my time, I'm going to go be with Jesus. I'm going to get to go home now. And Lynn did say that today. She said, I'm ready to go home. She told Lisa that. So thank you, John. Appreciate that. Anybody else? The bell just rang, so we're out of time, but okay. Well, next week, let me remind you that next week is the week of spring break. We'll have a lot of our student teachers and youth group and stuff out on a ski trip. I can't remember what the number is. Anybody in here going on the ski trip? Craig, how many people are going? Do you remember? Oh, okay. Wrong person to ask. Okay. I believe it's quite a few people that are going on the ski trip this year. 60 families. So if you, that's a Jacob count. You guys have heard of a preacher count before? This is a Jacob count. Okay. So take it for whatever that's worth. If you know somebody who's on that ski trip next week on Wednesday night, why don't you send them a text and say something like, Bible class was canceled because of you. Don't actually do that. Please don't actually do that. But yeah, that's right. Yeah. That'd be the way to do it, is throw me under the bus. Well, yeah. No, but we will not meet next week. We'll allow those who are on that ski trip to enjoy that time, and we'll break for a week. So not next week, but the week after that, we'll be back together and we'll pick up in chapter 11, try to read the rest of chapter 11 together the following Wednesday after next week. So please come back and join us again. We'd love to have you continue this reading and this study together. So Russ, will you close us in a prayer, and especially pray for Lynn and the Bradshaws?